Can I just say, before we actually get started with this, I find it's a little bit ironic that, considering that a large part of 2024 is consisted of me reading from the Quickie, it's also kind of strange the fact that, to be honest, I never thought about doing this for other things as well. And in fact, if any of you guys, if you think there's anything else I should be doing as well, these sorts of articles, then make sure to let me know, because I enjoyed doing this, and I think it's just more attentive for me to actually have a hand in reading stuff like this, if that makes sense. So with that being said, Chris and reading. This is not going to be the longest article in the world, but we'll make the most of it. Anyone who wants to be a good writer must be well read. It's one of the most natural ways to become acquainted with good style, the elements of a plot, and correct spelling. Chris's ego is so inflated that he thinks he can produce something brilliant with no effort whatsoever. While in school, the only books Chris read voluntarily are paperback Goosebumps and Fear Street, novels by R.L. Stine, which are notable only for their sheer mediocrity. Chris, well, I don't know about that. I mean, I read a lot of Goosebumps when I was a kid, but they weren't bad. They were just sort of probably a little bit... They were maybe basic, perhaps, but they did their job. I'm guessing the person who wrote this article didn't like Goosebumps very much. Chris read these books, which were written for elementary scholars, well into high school. Before Stine, Chris enjoyed reading Bernstein Bears, ironically claiming that The Bad Habit was his favourite book as a child. Given that the books are simplistic morality tales about talking animals in which problems come out of thin air and are easily resolved by the final pages, it's not hard to see how they appealed to Chris, let alone possibly influenced his childlike worldview and literary style. Now, you see, the thing I've got to try and present to you guys is something actually quite interesting, is that they may be, yes, but bear in mind, writing stuff like even Bernstein Bears, writing for children as young as 5 is so much harder than it sounds, because it's not just about trying to teach them a lesson, but you've got to engage in them. You've got to make them see, or you've got to do it in such a way that they'll be able to understand, which is, I mean, it's so much harder than it appears at first sight. And it's one of the things why, personally, you know what my favourite, my dream gig would be as a screenwriter? I would absolutely love the challenge of writing for Sesame Street. I make no hyperbole about that. I reckon writing an episode of Sesame Street is probably one of the hardest things I think I could have possibly have done. Not because I couldn't see myself doing it, but you've got to teach them something that they are going to remember. Something that they can use in their day-to-day lives. And bear in mind, this is a thing that's been that the US government has been doing for well over 50 years. And that's something else. Also, you've got to bear this in mind, is that Sesame Street was not written by a passionate elementary school teacher like Backyardigans. Sesame Street was devised by the US government. It was all done by a team of people who absolutely had to get the job right. And that's why I think it's as hard as it is, because yes, Sesame Street is, well, you wouldn't think that if you saw Sesame Street today, for example, and I know that the very first episode of Sesame Street is available on YouTube somewhere, and I even remembered watching it 5 years ago, and some of it is quite orchestrated in that direction, but it's, to people say it's easy to do that sort of thing, it's not that. But in comparison to Chris, is that Chris, well, we'll get to the reasons why later. I just kind of felt like the need to put it out there, because listen, the people who say that writing this sort of thing is easy, the worst sort of people out there are the ones who believe that things are easy. That they're not. It's not, but they are only difficult if you want to make them look difficult. But that's besides the point. Moving on. In terms of the readings that he was assigned at Manchester High School, Chris retained only a superficial understanding of them. During the father call, Chris said that he read To Kill a Mockingbird a mere month prior, which in all likelihood he only mentioned because it was assigned in high school. This was almost instantly proven false when he confused it with Of Mice and Men. You may remember when I did the original video of me doing the Casey father call when Chris did that. I had to pause the video for, no joke, 20 whole minutes, and I literally had to I was borderline throwing a tantrum. I tried to tell my dad, because me and Dad, we go back and forth a lot on great American novels and writers, and even though my stick is a lot more English writers as opposed to my dad, who prefers a lot of American writers, I can't really get into the understatement, ladies and gentlemen, how I say that. How on earth do you confuse the plots of To Kill a Mockingbird with Of Mice and Men? I don't know how Chris managed to do that, but he did. And before anybody, and before people out there don't really know either, I read Of Mice and Men when I was in high school, when I was about 14. I also read during this, well, okay, Of Mice and Men was obligatory because it was part of my GCSEs. What I also read, actually, you know what, I'm not even going to get into that right now because it's not really relevant, but it's only relevant to the fact that this app still completely astounds me how Chris managed to do that. Another high school assignment, the essay he wrote about a selection from Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales earned only a 69%. I mean, it's not the worst. I mean, what exactly did he do for... oh god, there's actually a lot here, so... Okay, this is going to be a separate video in itself, okay. Because here's the thing, I've never read Canterbury Tales, so maybe I should read it to get myself acquainted for what comes next. And this is the reading start, his basis for his reading. Develop your psychic skills. Terrific start already. Develop Your Psychic Skills by Enid Hoffman was published in 1981 and republished in 1997. According to an excerpt from the book, cover of the book, a back cover of the book, it gives you a broad overview of the whole field of psychic experiences. The exercises and practices given in this book are enjoyable and easy to do. Use them to strengthen and focus your own natural abilities and turn them into precise, coordinated skills. You'll be amazed at the changes that begin to happen in your life as you activate the right hemisphere of your brain, the initiative, creative, psychic half which has been so seldom used for so long. When Chris read the psychokinesis chapter, which mentioned magician Uri Geller by name, he decided to try emailing Geller in September 2017 to ask for help with developing his psychic skills, although Geller replied that this was a waste of time. And then Chris responded back by saying she was not wasting his time. The Man in the High Castle. Oh, good lord, Chris actually read Man in the High Castle. That's pretty cool. The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick was published in 1962. It is an alternative history novel based on the idea of the Axis power winning World War II. During the Idea Guy saga, Joshua Wise convinced Chris to read the novel. By the 10th of January 2018, Chris reported that he was on Chapter 11. The book is also mentioned in Solitude issue 13. I mean, yeah, probably. I don't... Wait, hang on a minute. Wait, so the Idea Guys convinced Chris to read Man in the High Castle and Chris just believed every single word of it? Well, maybe not, but why is this something that's never been brought up again in any of Chris's ramblings about different dimensions if he is told to believe what happens in the Man in the High Castle was based on fact? It might have also been possible that Chris could have been lying here and he might have just watched the TV show on Amazon. The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability. Oh god, not this. The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability by Miriam Kaufman, Corey Silverberg, and Fran Odette was published in September 2020. Chris purchased a copy from Amazon for use during his incestuous affair with his own mother. He described the book as a valuable and informative book to add additional guidance. Good lord. Use of highlighters. Also, so you'll know, I have a rainbow of highlighters, each specified with the false true range and then some. Pay attention. Chris, June of 2021. Well, considering what would happen at the end of June, I'm assuming that we never got to see the chance of this come to fruition. A highlighter is a writing tool to specially noting text. Chris has a system for highlighting, demonstrated on at least 3 occasions. When reading Warhorse/Chris Chan, Chris highlighted selected portions of the text in various colours. He explained his methods in a Twitter post. Pink, that's wrong, see facts of from me. Orange, half right, half wrong, see my facts. Yellow, genuinely interesting or made me smile. Additional facts, green, additional facts for context, I have more to it than stated. Blue, totally agree and on point. Purple, highly resonant with me. And judging by what we see here, there seems to be quite a number of things that kind of were going back and forth on. Maybe I should read that as well. Warhol Chris Chan might be a pretty interesting thing to go into. I mean, I know the money's not really going to Chris, but well, maybe the person, at least maybe getting some connection with Warhol might be something quite interesting. Warhol was quite an interesting man as well, as an industrial sort of artist. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am unprecedented in having to relay the information to you guys that we're done. That's the whole article of Chris in reading. So, okay, let's go through this one step at a time before we... A book on psychics that somebody later said was bullshit. Man in the High Castle. The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability. The Bernstein Bears books. Fear Street. Goosebumps. And Warhol and Chris Chan. And The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability. As far as we're aware of, that's the only real evidence Chris has suggested to, like, things he's actually read in his life. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to state for the record right now that I'm not looking down on Chris just for not reading. I think there are people who are invariable snobs who look down on people just because they don't read. It's not for anybody to say whether that's good or bad. But considering Chris is trying to present the idea that he is a writer, like he's trying to write some like actual works of fiction, it's just kind of shows the fact that Chris only really takes references as far as what he's seen on television, but he doesn't really seem to take any lead about why any of those things worked, or maybe it could be possible that he doesn't see any lead towards why the things in Bernstein and Bears work either. That's kind of always been like a bit of a universal issue for Chris, is that he doesn't really seem to understand why or what we do those sorts of things for. Like, it's reflective in Chris's writing style as well, but what exactly... I mean, it could also be possible that Chris just lied about when he said he was up to chapter 11 in The Man in the High Castle. Remember, this is a man who also tried to blab his way through Casey's father by saying he read To Kill a Mockingbird, and then he explained basically the plot of Mice and Men. So whether you really want to suggest Chris knows or he's only trying to do it to make himself look intelligent, it's entirely up to luck. But again, you don't need to read anything stupendous or anything at university level to dissect, to analyze, to write essays from. There are plenty of people that did, and when I was in the later years of high school, it was something I did quite a lot. I mean, I read plays, I read a lot of classic American stuff. I had to read like a lot of modern Gothic horror and stuff like that. And even when I was at university, I took a special interest in a lot of British-made stuff, from John Milton to Orwell to a large selection of poems by the likes of like Philip Larkin and Butler and Joyce. But I read those things because I was interested in doing it. I didn't do it because I was trying to make myself look impressive. I only read them because I enjoyed doing those sorts of things. Which, call it what you like, ladies and gentlemen, but again, you should do the things you enjoy, and you should enjoy the things you enjoy, if that makes sense. And so what Chris doesn't necessarily may see the joy in reading. That's entirely his point of view. But, well, if he it's reflective in his lack of education and his ego when we start comparing it towards his own Solitude comics and the writing style of that. But with all that being said and done, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this short article, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.